What if everything you knew about leadership was wrong? What if leadership isn't about titles, power, or polished highlight reels, but it's more about stripping it all back to the truth? I'm Annie Gibbins, CEO, mentor, and unapologetic truth teller. And in this podcast, I sit down with leaders from around the globe who are willing to go a little bit deeper, to share their raw or messy, powerful reality of what it truly takes to lead. This is The Naked Leader. Hello, friends, and welcome to the very first episode of The Naked Leader. I'm Annie Gibbins, and this podcast is all about stripping leadership back to what truly matters. And for me, it comes down to one word: freedom. Freedom gives you choice, the choice to feel safe and secure and powerful enough to become the person you were born to be. And that belief for me was shaped by two incredible women who influenced me more than anyone else in my life. And that is my grandmothers. My grandmothers were so different. One grandmother, her name was Irene, she was born an aristocrat in Russia. So she grew up surrounded by privilege, only to lose everything when they had to flee following the fall of Tsar Nicholas. And from the outside, you might think this is a terrible story. And it was when I was growing up. Here she was, this really ultra rich child with nannies and massive camel farm estates and stories like this. And then suddenly had to lose everything, flee amongst family, friends' homes to get to a relative's in Germany. And then eventually she moved to France and then came to Australia as an immigrant. But what Irene carried with her was something that she passed on to me. She used to say, Annie, everything is possible if you think like you have diamonds in your pockets. I'm like, when I was a kid going, what? Who has diamonds in their pockets? But she did. When she had to flee, she had diamonds sewn into her pockets. And for her, they were like a power trip. They were the survival that she would need to use at certain parts of her journey. And what she meant when she shared her stories about these diamonds in her pockets was that wealthy people believe that everything is achievable. While you've got those diamonds, while you've got the belief that people in your network will help you, if you have power and influence and connections and definitely money, you will then be able to make most things happen. They didn't doubt the possibility, and they still don't today. And I think that mindset is really powerful. And I've absorbed a lot of that in my life. Think like I have diamonds in my pocket. Have a mindset that is limitless. My other grandmother was called Mary, and she couldn't have been more different. She was born into deep poverty, and her mother left her when she was 2. And her lesson to me was really blunt, but it was certainly life-changing. She said, no one is ever going to come and save you. You have to do everything yourself, and you have to work harder than anyone else. Harsh. Oh my goodness, it was so harsh. My two grandmothers, two very different perspectives of life. And one taught me a limitless mindset of possibility, and the other taught me the relentless drive of self-reliance, really. And I think I'm now a combination of both of these incredible ladies. I think like I do have diamonds in my pocket. I always come up with grand ideas and I just believe big, bold opportunities are possible. But I also work really hard and more recently, smarter rather than harder and definitely than my competitors. And that's what I want for all of you. That blend of essence from my grandmothers has shaped everything that I've done as a leader. And it's helped me be able to read the game of life. You know, I anticipate change. I adjust quickly when required. And that's why even when AI emerged as a real disruptive force, I was one of the first adopters to lean in. I even got asked to speak on AI at an association conference. So I wrote a book called AI for Association Leaders, because that's what leadership is, right? It's staying ahead, it's adapting fast, it's helping others to do the same. So I thought for today's episode, I'd take you back, find out a little bit about me, the host, And I really look forward over the years ahead to be able to share lots of naked leader stories as I interview men and women from around the globe who've just got such fascinating stories of who they've become and what leadership means to them. So let me take you back. I always had a strong desire to be a business leader, right? And most importantly, linked to my freedom, I wanted to be financially independent. You see, to create freedom in your own life and the lives of others, you need to be financially free. My grandmother's taught me that. Otherwise, you're always apologetic and you're always indebted to others. And that wasn't going to work for me. And I don't want that for you. But my dad had different dreams for me. He wanted me to become a pharmacist so I could work with him and one day take over the business. And it was really respectable. It was safe. It was secure. In fact, it was a bit of a golden ticket. But in my final year of high school, my dad's pharmacy was robbed, not once, not twice, but he got robbed 3 times with obviously guns. Back in the 80s, pharmacists used to have quite high quality drugs that were just in a bit of a safe, but it was pretty easy to be broken into when you point a gun at a pharmacist's head. So in that moment, I thought, I don't want to die for this career. So instead of pharmacy, I chose nursing. Not a lot of thought went into it. It was just a practical, life-saving profession, really. And I needed a lifesaver to get out of pharmacy. When I didn't get into pharmacy, my dad was really deeply disappointed, and that made me really sad. But it was the right choice for me because to him it felt like I'd stepped away from the right path. And how many of us have been told that there is a right path for us? And for me, nursing wasn't even definitely the most appropriate path. I would have loved to have just done business or commerce. It was simply a doorway to walk through, really. My real dream was to become a business leader. And even from that early time where I used to dream of that when I was in my teens, I took it with me on my journey. So, what happened next? Well, as well as becoming a registered nurse, at 20, I married James, my childhood sweetheart, and at 23, became a mother of twins, twin boys. And at 25, we welcomed another set of twins. Yes, listeners, you've heard me right. 4 kids in 26 months. Oh my gosh, my joy was exploding. My life was overwhelming. My possibilities of becoming a business leader were just dwindling fast. And at 32, we welcomed our 5th child. So 5 children, including 2 sets of twins before my mid-30s. Oh my goodness, the juggle was immense. And I look back now and I can hardly even imagine how I actually did it. I had a fabulous hubby, but he was gone all day and it was just a lot of babies to juggle, a lot of sleepless nights, study deadlines, career ambitions, tears and emotions aplenty, 5 beautiful young kids to raise. And some days it felt like I was totally on top of everything. I'm like, man, I am super mum. I've got this nailed. And other days I felt like my head was barely above water. I felt like I was drowning and I'm like, no one is coming to save me here. But those incredible years, particularly when they were really little, they taught me so much resilience. All right. No one was coming to save me. It was up to me during the days. But I also needed to dream big and not let those thoughts in my head of who I wanted to become and what I wanted to do with my life, I needed to not lose those because they were seeded at a very young age for an important reason. They taught me this time to be resourceful. I had to do something on no money. I had to do so much on no money. I had to be determined. I had to be incredibly focused to be able to have that dedication to still do studies around these very loud household of 3 boys and 2 girls. But they shaped me into a leader long before I even carried a leadership title. So I started with a Bachelor of Nursing because originally I did a diploma. So we did a diploma and 2 years later they said, now it's a bachelor, but you have to do a conversion. So I went back and did that around the kiddies and it was crazy and it nearly killed me, but I did it. And then a few years later, I was still having a little sobby moment one day, which I had regularly about, I thought I was going to be a businesswoman, those little moments. And hubby's like, oh, babe, you're running this house. You're amazing, which was greatly appreciated, but it kind of didn't get me to where I was wanted to be. So I then decided to do a graduate diploma of adult education because that gave me a pathway into higher education. And I thought, well, at least I could manage a nursing department or a school one day. And I thought that might be my big way of being a business owner, a leader. And then I enjoyed it so much. I found out that I was actually a little uni junkie, and I then went on to do a master's of adult education as well, always with the kids underfoot and often with a baby on the boob and doing the assignments in the early hours of the morning when the house was asleep and I was probably massively over sleep deprived, but somehow I just chipped away at these assignments and I got there. Every step was a real building block and a way to get closer to the freedom that I craved. And it's weird actually now reflecting back of why did I need freedom? I had freedom. I have a beautiful husband and I wasn't restricted in any way. But for me, it was just this, it sort of came down, I think, to my grandmothers that I thought were such pioneers and such amazing women who achieved so much. Like the French Russian one ended up becoming a matron, a head nurse of a psychiatric hospital in Australia. So incredible considering her journey. And the other one became an accountant for a car yard, which was incredible. She went back to night school even after her husband left her with 3 kids, and she just did it. These women were powerful, they were tenacious, they were really pioneers before their time, but both of them shared that they had a regret that they weren't truly free. They felt like they had to ask permission for even to get a car or even what types of foods to buy. They were always apologizing. And that was one thing that really stood from their advice to me. It's like, don't apologize for things that you haven't done or that you're not responsible for. I notice now with people that I coach around the world and even those that I work with that we just apologize too much. We're always saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. If it's not to do with us, you don't need to apologize. And so somewhere in there, it was just this desire to be financially independent for me. I wanted to reach my potential and just know that I was financially free so that if I wanted to buy a car or I wanted to go on a holiday, I didn't have to ask permission. It was just something wired into me. So even though everyone I knew told me I was just a little bit crazy, year after year after year, I just chipped away at these qualifications and I ended up getting 3 degrees and I became a head teacher of nursing at an adult education college. And then later on, I then got a national manager role at the Australian Orthopaedic Association. I had my master's. I'd worked in orthopedics and I understood the medical situation. And my goodness, every step of the way, I felt resistance. I felt everybody was saying, you're not going to get it. You needed more. Or who's going to look after the kids when you're there? Although they never said that to my husband. And it was just a real challenge. Even before then, when I became head teacher of nursing, I got a lot of criticism from the other teachers because it was a real time of seniority rules. And they're like, don't you apply for this role? It's not your turn. It's someone else's turn. And I felt like a real queue jumper or that I was becoming difficult. But I thought, well, why not me? You know, if I apply, it's good experience. And anyway, along the long story, yes, I did get it. And it wasn't because I was the most experienced, but I did have a lot of courage and tenacity, and I believed in myself, and I had ideas of how I could help that college move forward. I was ridiculously passionate. I've always had so much energy as well. But along with the energy, you can't just be all fluff and bubble. You've got to be able to have a path and a way of moving forward. And probably in that time, somewhere in that era, I realized that I actually was quite strategic. I could see the road of what I was trying to achieve. And I also learned a real key learning there that I needed to know how I would measure success at the end, where I was going, what I was trying to achieve, and how I would measure that success rather than just plod along and hope something amazing happens. I thought that was really quite a foundational learning for me many years ago. So I had great few years at the Orthopedic Association, and then I took on my first CEO role at the Australasian Society for Ultrasound Medicine. And here's the truth. I didn't have an MBA, and on paper, I was not the perfect candidate. And everyone said, "What? How are you going to apply for that? You're not going to get it." And I went, "Well, you know what? You've said that before, and I got it. So I'm going to just use it as an experience, and I'm going to apply anyway." So I seriously, on this one, although the orthopedic surgeon one was actually quite easy for me, this one I worked my butt off preparing for an interview. I interviewed even every CEO or leader that I knew, and I created this. It was like a little pack, a presentation pack of what I would do in the first 100 days as their CEO. And I gave it out to everyone who was interviewing me on this panel. And it was amazing, actually. I was pretty proud of it. And I got the role. And yeah, for the first 6 months, I was terrified. I walked into the office every day thinking, what am I going to do when they find out that I don't actually know what I'm doing? But you know what? I did know. I did know most things really well, and a few things, particularly around reading budgets and P&Ls and things like that, I probably wasn't as confident. But it's amazing, this little imposter syndrome. It's sort of like, oh, you seem to think you've got to be instantly perfect. Whereas the reality is, you know what? I was a first time CEO. It was normal not to know many things, and people are there to support you. You can always phone a friend. No one was dying, not like when I was a nurse. I could actually just take a breath, think about it, get some logic into it, ask other people's opinions, and go on a very rapid learning curve. And it was really cool. I absolutely loved it. And I learnt that one of the key ways to overcome imposter syndrome is just to actually look it in the eye, frenemy, and go, I see you. I see what you're trying to do, and I'm not going to accept it. I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to just keep showing up, and I'm going to do that 1% better every day. And it then suddenly just goes away. So later on my journey, so I'd now been a not-for-profit CEO for a number of years, and I had other people coming to me and say, how did you get to where you are? Because I was the least likely success person with all these kids everywhere. And I was always in this mad flurry of, I've got to get to the boys to soccer training, or I've got to get the girls to dance classes, and they're like, how on earth did you do 3 degrees around all those kiddies? And how did you become a CEO? Almost to like, did you do something wrong? Which is a bit offensive. And then I started having people ask me if I'd coach them. And I'm like, yeah, I'll coach you. So I set up Women's Biz Global because I was helping women do business globally. There's a good brand name there. And so for 16 years, I coached women around the world. And it really was in honor of my grandma. My why, someone asked me back then, well, what was your reason? And I went, I just want more and more women to become financially independent. I want them to have freedom. Because although I then got that rather rapidly, I'm also blessed. I was born in Australia in a beautiful environment, and I've been really supported throughout my life. And people in other parts of the world have it so hard. So I wanted to really use Women's Biz Global as a way of just helping and blessing and mentoring and coaching women, often pro bono or in very affordable coaching programs, but also just as a way of really just giving back, really. So it became a platform for worldwide businesses to start and grow and scale. And it was a very, very cool time. And I look back now and think, yeah, my grandmothers would be really proud. And I still walk around going, I feel like I've got diamonds in my pocket, and I'm just going to work harder and smarter. So now I've coached thousands of women around the world, and I was super blessed back in 2023 to go to New York City, and I received 6 Stevie Awards, and one of them was the Grand Stevie Award for Women in Business. Super, super, super stunned. Here I am on the stage next to IBM and Salesforce, and I'm like, how did little old me from Australia get in this position? And I just felt honored and overwhelmed, and also just really proud of myself that I'd backed myself when others didn't. And I just kept showing up like an Olympian, rain, hail, or shine. And I Yeah, I just stayed the path. And I realized that I didn't really know what the end job was, but I knew what the steps would be that I needed to just continually learn. And then over the next decade, I started a magazine. I had Women's Biz Magazine. I did 200 episodes of Women's Biz podcast. I host a program on Ticker TV, Women's Biz Leaders. I became a publisher. I wrote lots of books with myself and with others. Yes, there's a book in there called Twins. I finally got round to that when the kids were about 30. 28 and 30, I think I finally wrote a book on twins because let's face it, got no time when you've actually got those little kiddies. And I really have just had such joy of watching women and now men really step into that freedom on their own terms. That's what actually sparks joy for me. So been a CEO for now, 14, 15 years. Also became a company director, started a business with my husband, and that's been really successful. I've done Lean Six Sigma and company directors and helped create a registered training organization, a college. And so there's been so many things that have happened in my journey, but they all had obstacles, they all had setbacks, they all had doubts, they all had resistance. And most of it was external. Most of it was what was in my head or what other people's perspective was and how they presented that to me as a truth. And that's something that has really changed me, that now I take everything as a comment. I go, thank you for that. I'll take that as a comment. And then I actually just sort of put it in front of me and I examine it and I go, is this for me? And is this right for me for where I want to be going? Or is that something from that person and their experience? And if it is, I just disregard it. I don't give it any merit because otherwise you just start going down different tunnels. You doubt yourself. And then 10 years later, you suddenly go, oh my gosh, they had no idea what they were talking about. All right. So it wasn't handed to me. Seriously, it was hard. Oh my gosh, juggling it around all those kiddies. Like, I certainly did do the career path a really hard way, but it is what it is, and no regrets and no, I don't get frustrated about that. I just think that's what needed to happen. And therefore I wanted to fight for that opportunity. And it is a game changer. Once you do that in the game of life, you have more opportunities. And so for me, I've never shied away from profitability, right? So while I remember when I first became a CEO of an association, they said, you've got to act poor and look poor. And I went, what a terrible perspective. Because if I was going to give money to a charity or an association, if you look that poor or ramshackle, it looks like you don't know how to manage that money. Whereas I was the opposite. I'm like, no, I want to make this business really profitable because then we can do a whole lot of really good things. Isn't that what we want? We want millions to bless millions. So it was an interesting learning curve on my journey to leadership. At times I backed myself and then I just heard crickets, like things weren't happening. I regularly cried my eyes out on things just not working quick enough for me because I get really frustrated and I'm quite impulsive and I like very quick turnaround. But I also learned so much about reading the game, finding what's happening, learning when to be agile and responsive, but not for no reason, and to really learn about the collective. There's so much value about partnering up with people who complement each other. And we can talk about that on another episode. So, oh my goodness, there's so much in here that is all about my journey to leadership. So here I am today launching The Naked Leader. And I want this podcast to be about everything that I've shared. Do you have diamonds in your pockets? Do you think like you do, even if you're not there yet? Do you have a relentless hard work spirit and mindset? Even if you work hard for 3 days so that you can have a break on the others, how are you managing setbacks, imposter syndrome? How are you navigating your blocks to become breakthroughs? It's all about freedom, because freedom isn't about having the right title or the perfect CV. It's about the courage to show up. It's about the courage to adapt, to think big, and to keep moving all the time. So I want to ask you today as I finish up, where are you waiting for permission? Where? From who? What are you waiting for? And who has that authority or hold over you? All right. Where are you telling yourself it's not your turn? All right. Because you might be holding yourself back. All right. Where are you holding yourself because you don't tick all the boxes? Because I haven't ticked all the boxes and things are always possible. What would happen if you actually thought like you had diamonds in your pocket, like you're royal, like you have no blockages in front of you? Puff that chest out, walk proudly, imagine more things are possible. And what would happen if you actually started to work a bit harder and a lot more smarter than anyone else to make your next step happen? What is your sweet spot? That's what we're aiming for. I coach people all around the world to start, grow, and scale. And we find that little sweet spot that becomes truly who we are. And once you do that, business is easy. And that's the essence of the Naked Leader. So thank you for joining me on this very first episode, a little bit of personal sharing. And if my story resonated, I encourage you to hit subscribe, share this episode with someone that you know, and join me as I strip leadership back to its very core. We're going to be talking about resilience and authenticity and courage, and above all, freedom. I'm going to be interviewing people who have become successful from all around the globe. We're going to hear about their backstory, their blockages, but mainly their stories of overcoming and how it helped them become the leader that they are today. All right. So leadership isn't about the mask you wear. It's about the courage you have when you take it off. All right. It's when you have the freedom to live unapologetically as the person you're born to be. And I look forward to sharing many of those conversations with you over the coming months. Thank you for listening to The Naked Leader. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone searching for more, and hit follow so you never miss a future episode. And if you're ready to level up your own success, head over to anniegibbins.com and see how I can help you start, grow, or scale your next step. I'm Annie Gibbins. This was The Naked Leader.